What's your family's take on stand-up comedy?
I think I've had some like run-ins with relatives, you know, in the past where it's like, you need to make a public apology, that kind of thing. But this is like way before anyone even knew who I was. I'm like, public to who? Like my Facebook, you know.
Wait a minute. Public, we got to go to the public apology.
Yeah.
Was it over a specific joke?
Yeah, it was a joke I told about my grandmother, who I never met, who was an alcoholic. And basically, it was like when we were voting for Hillary or something, people were dedicating their votes to other women. And I think I said that I was dedicating my vote to my grandmother, not because she would have voted for Hillary, but because she was too drunk to drive to the polls or something.
It's a great joke.
It was, you know, it was like an easy, fun. I thought it was fun, but my family was not.
Whimsical.
Yeah. It's a whimsical joke about alcoholism, about a woman who died of alcoholism.
You're having like a crazy good run right now in your career. Like between all the stuff you've done with Amy Schumer and SNL and Michael Che and the special you just did on Netflix, like you just had a baby.
Yeah.
Are you like overwhelmed?
Yes.
Like, what the hell's going on?
Yes, I'm in hell.
It's a lot of stuff.
I mean, I'm really grateful. I feel like I'm having a lucky streak, and I feel like I got a lot of stuff kind of a lot of, what is it, irons on the fire or whatever, like in before the baby came. So it was like I found out I was pregnant, and I like immediately went into like, okay, what do I have to do to like keep things rolling after the baby gets here, so that I don't end up experiencing that thing that I knew I would experience and I am experiencing, but because I love what I do. Yeah. So there's this thing that happens, and I'm sure you've experienced it, where like when you have a kid, you're like, is this my life forever now? Am I going to like die?
And the answer is yes to both.
Yes. Yes.
Is this my life forever? Yes.
Yes.
Am I going to die? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm like experiencing that while working, and it's like looking for the funny in something that is truly like the least funny. I mean, it's funny, but while you're in it, there's nothing funny about it. Like you're just kind of, you're in a dream state. You don't know what's going on.
Right. Like on Instagram, you had, you wrote, I cannot, this is great. I cannot adequately describe how dark it is to be crying on your kitchen floor because your pelvis is shattered and your feet are full of water, but also be like, oh fuck, I have to upload a crowd work clip. That's a riot. Like, do you bring that onto the stage?
I haven't yet. I think, I mean, I've tried to like explain to people what this feels like, and I still am figuring it out myself. So I'm trying to, but I don't know if it's working. And it also feels exceedingly boring to talk to other people about. Like, that's the thing I'm coming up against on stage. Yeah. Did you feel like that at all? Where like, you're like trying to describe what it feels like to have a kid, and you're just talking about like diapers and shit like that. And I just feel like people are looking at me like, shut up. Like, please shut up. Yeah.
No, of course they are.
Yeah.
Especially like at a comedy club where they're like relatively young.
Yes.
And they're just like, I don't want to think about this.
Yeah. They're like, I'm not curious about this. I don't want to know about it. Like, no, of course. It's so isolating in that way. But I'm kind of like feeling that more so than let me find material about this. Like, the thing that's so interesting to me about it is like every time I go on stage, I have a full identity crisis afterwards. Yeah. And I don't want to talk to parents either, because parents that aren't comics don't really get it. I mean, if you meet a parent who really loved their job before, then that's that's similar, but like there's some kind of there's a divide between me and my friends that have kids that don't do comedy.
No, I get that.
Where they're just like, this isn't it amazing and beautiful? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Like, it has its moments, yes, but also, weren't you scared? Like,
I describe the first year of Oona's life as like, she's like a bag of rice. Like an animated bag of rice.
Yes.
And you just got to make sure that she's still animated.
Yes.
Sometimes you're like, she's not animated. You're like, no, she's sleeping. That's sleeping. Yeah. But it's like,
yes.
But it really is. But then some people don't have that experience. Like Jenny's experience was not that. Like that was my experience, whatever. But yeah, it's such a specific thing. And I think like when I wrote about it in the new one, which was my last special, it was, I wrote, as much as possible, I would perform like at colleges.
Yeah.
So that it would put weights on my feet.
Oh my God.
How do I make this funny to people who have no relationship with this?
Yeah.
And a lot of it had to do with like, I created like a metaphor in that show about how like, you know, how like it's about stability and like ritual. And I talk about like my couch. Like I love my couch. And then, you know, and that became like the entry point at the beginning of the show for like where people understand what I'm talking about. And then it's all about like, you know, the show became about like change in life, like massive life change.
Yeah.
And for me, it was having a baby. For you, it might have been whatever else in the audience. Certainly college students, not a lot of them have had kids. So it's like they're putting on themselves like what that is.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Because you don't want to be, I think the reason why audiences recoil at kid stuff is that they're like, oh, is this going to be an hour on your kid?
Right.
And there's like nothing worse than in real life, a person being like, let me show you a picture of my kid.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, there's one thing that I feel like has been working on stage where I talk about how having a kid is like going to space. And you come back and you're like, I've been to space. And you're like, look at this, look. And they're like, yeah, I've seen pictures of space. And you're like, no, but it's my trip to space. You know, and they don't give a fuck. They're like, I could Google a picture of space.
It's my picture of space.
Yeah. So but it is this kind of like, I don't know.
You're like, look at the stars.
Yeah.
That's a real star.
Right.
No, I've seen pictures of stars.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care.
But no, well, hold on. That's a cloud. You wouldn't think it.
Yeah, have you seen this kind of cloud? Have you? Yeah, it is this kind of like weird thing where I just like, I am so glad that she's here.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm like, have I made a horrible mistake?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. It's so dark.
But you haven't.
Yeah, no, I don't feel like I have, because when I think back about where I was at with my life before, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I did whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
My time was my own. I could do anything.
Yeah.
I go, and I was still bored.
Yes.
I was really bored. I was like, I love my life. Everything's great.
Yeah.
And there's got to be more to it than this.
Right.
You know?
But I think like one of the things that's positive that's happened in the last decade is like on your Netflix special, you're pregnant. Ali Wong was pregnant. I think Schumer was pregnant in one of hers. Like that's new, which is great.
Yeah.
So baby steps, I guess. No pun intended.
Right. I mean, it's still at the place where people go, oh, you know, I think I got like one or two comments that were like, oh, are you going to do the Ali Wong thing? And I'm like, it's not a fucking shtick.
It's not a thing.
It's not a shtick. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a thing that happens to us. So it's like, there's still that, but...
Ali patented being pregnant.
Yeah, I know. That
was an amazing patent.
Yeah.
She has made
She's the
so
first
much money on
and
that.
only female comic to ever be pregnant.
Yes.
That's the thing that and even I was thinking that. I was doing that to myself going into it, where I was like, oh, great, I'm going to do the pregnant thing, you know, and it's like, it's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
You know? So
the goal is that so many people do it that it's not discussed as like whatever.
Exactly.
That's just what life is.
Exactly.
You can compare it to any number of life experiences, but it's it's extreme.
Yeah.
It's an extreme life experience.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you go into the mouth of the lion of how extreme it is, which I feel like you're doing so far.
Right.
Like that'll be good. I mean, like even like when you lift up your outfit and you show the belt in your special. What is it called? Like an ADR belt?
It's like it's a belly band, and there was a I don't know what the bottom part of it was called. It was like I had to buy like 3 different belts and wear all of them.
So basically, for the listeners if you haven't seen this Netflix verified comedy special, Rosebud is one of the Dulce and a handful of other
Nimesh. There was a bunch of comics.
Yes, a bunch of comics were on it. And in the middle of your set, you go, how can I describe it as the baby was too heavy?
Yeah. So I had something called SPD, which I still can't pronounce. I don't know how to say it. But basically the ligaments in your pelvis loosen because of the hormones, and the weight of my baby was heavy enough that it actually caused my pelvis to split. So basically the doctor was like, you can wear this belt and it will tape your pelvis together, essentially.
Wow.
Like it'll like hold your pelvis together, and she was like, make sure that you keep your legs together when you're like getting in and out of bed and getting into a car. And I'm like, that's insane. You can't get into a car with your legs together. Like that's a crazy way. I was like it was just I could not, by the end of my pregnancy, I couldn't walk. So
oh my gosh.
I was like 8.5 months pregnant, and I could get to the stage and I could get off the stage. Yeah. But I just immediately had to lie down, like from the time that I got to the venue to the time that I like left. Like it was so painful to stand.
I mean, I gotta hand it to you. It's like the amount of people who would not have done that is many.
Well, yeah. I mean, they probably respect themselves.
I mean, it's like, that's so hard. You could have not gone.
I could have not gone. Yeah. No,
I love that you did.
I keep looking back and going like, did I have to do that? You know? Yeah. But I think that the other option was like sitting at home on the couch and just thinking about being pregnant. Yeah. Which was awful. Like that's an awful option.
Well, right, because as comedians, we're all just in our heads anyway.
Yeah.
And so you're probably gonna think about the worst possible outcomes.
Right. I mean, I look at how much I worked during my pregnancy, and I'm like, oh, that was all just because I couldn't just sit there and like think about I couldn't just sit there Googling my symptoms all day. Like that's what I would have done. Yeah. You know.
Do you have advice for anyone who's attempting to do what you did? Which is like have a baby while at the same time pursuing like being a performer?
Yeah. I mean, just do it. Just keep doing it. I guess like the one thing that I really think I did right during my pregnancy was I trusted my own opinion. Like I didn't want to breastfeed, and I knew that I just didn't want to do that. Yeah. And part of it was a little bit of like a fuck you to society because I felt so much pressure to do it. And there's all this shit about like how if you breastfeed, you won't get cancer. And I'm like, that is basically fear mongering on a different level, in a different, like around a back door. So I knew I had to go back to work, and I wasn't going to like stop in the middle of a sketch to go pump. I'm just not. Right. So I knew that wasn't for me. And I didn't feel regret about it. I didn't feel like I just knew that I wanted to do that. So I feel like for any woman who's pregnant, whether they're a performer or not, like if you have an opinion about something, if you know that you don't want to do something, that's fine. Yeah. Just don't do it. Yeah. Like that would be my advice, is just trust your own opinion.
I just started watching that damn Michael J.
Oh, yeah?
Because I didn't have Max before, and I think that's where it was.
Yeah.
Did you... 2 seasons, right?
Yeah.
And did you write them both seasons? Mm-hmm. The show's brilliant.
I love that show, yeah. It's one of my favorite... It's one of the shows that I have worked on that I'm most proud of.
Like, it seems like groundbreaking
I know.
to me.
Same.
Like, there's this episode about his friend getting shot. And
refusing to take an ambulance.
Trying to take a cab to the emergency room, and it's like devastating.
Yeah.
Like, real, but also funny, but also dramatic.
Yeah.
And then, like, but also with tons of jokes and, like, dark, but I don't know, like, okay, when you're pitching at SNL versus when you're pitching at, like, that damn Michael J show, how different are those two experiences?
It's just completely different. Right, like, almost opposite, if you could. Like, with SNL, first of all, time is limited. So you go into a room and you go, like, this is the idea, okay? Somebody's, like, a guy gets a pig heart, right? And then that's the sketch, okay? He's just had a pig heart in, like, surgically implanted, and then you have a couple of moves, right? With Che,
if this, what else? Kind of like, if the pig heart, then beat 2, beat 3, beat 4.
With Che, somebody walks into the room and goes, hey, I was reading in the Times this morning that this happened. And then somebody else would go, oh, I just read an article in the Times about how a guy got a pig heart implanted in his chest. And then we'd go, wait. And then somebody would go, that's crazy. He's got to be dead. And then somebody else goes, obviously, he's dead. And then we would find a way to build a sketch around that idea. But it was all so conversational.
Oh, interesting.
That it wasn't like, hey, I have this pitch. What do you think about this? We would just sit down as comics and start talking.
Yeah.
And somebody would say something that felt like a sketch.
Yeah.
And then the sketch would come out of that. And it was like 1 or 2 people would write that sketch, but the whole room came up with the sketch and the moves for it, and it was all just riffing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it all felt really organic.
Here's the thing I'll say about that show that is a marvel to me. It's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, particularly when he has the dating episode, and in the first, like, scene, he's, like, with a woman out on a date, and he says a few lines that are witty.
Yeah.
And then the last scene, it's someone else, and he says the same lines.
Yeah.
And it has this kind of, like, it's like a cinematic experience of, like, what is, I mean, look, it's that damn Michael J show. It's like, it's him.
Yeah.
And he can't say it's not him.
Yeah.
And it's, like, very vulnerable.
I know. Yeah. And I think that was something that over the seasons got better and better. Like, I think that he got, we only had 2.
Yeah.
But I was like, I think he resisted it a little bit, but I think he was willing to go, okay, yeah, if it's my show, I gotta, like, say what I'm kind of, like, going through and dealing with, and, and I think that came from, he had women in the room, in the writer's room, and all of us were like, well, you're alone because we were more than happy to be like, this is why you're alone.
Oh my God, that's so good.
And he'd be like, what? But Che's always like, what? And then he'd be like, yeah, you're right. You're not wrong.
What?
So he was, like, willing to go for it.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. It makes me so happy that was the process.
Yeah. I wish more of the writers' rooms that I've been in had that kind of process, because it felt so much. And I don't know why we don't, because it's the most natural way to build something together. It's how comics interact. We sit around a table, we shoot the shit, we end up somewhere, and because all of us are, like, programmed to think, what's the bit?
Yeah.
You get there. And you get there so much easier than if you're like, all right, I got to come up with a sketch, and this is what, all right, so if I go into this room and I have all the moves planned out, and then it's already built and there's no camaraderie.
Well,
you
it's
know?
like it's more like college improv, honestly.
Yeah.
It's more like a bunch of best friends just being like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Let's have breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Let's have dinner and breakfast and lunch.
I know.
And dinner again.
I know. And it feels so good. I love that feeling
Yeah.
more than I think anything. Like
Season 3, come on.
I know.
Who does he decide or HBO decide? Who decided that wasn't a season 3?
I think it was probably like Max got sold or Max, they were ending Max and then somebody new comes in and you know how it is. Like,
right.
It's always like a network exec turns over and then somebody else.
Those guys are hilarious, by the way.
I know.
Those how is that not a category at New Faces?
I know.
New executives?
I know.
Montreal new executives? Oh my God, Zaslav's killing.
Yeah. What did you, what masterpiece did you throw out the window to put your stamp on it?
Oh my God. Okay, so these are slow round questions. Do you have nicknames in your life that you were particularly good or bad?
Nicknames in my life that were particular. My mom calls me Rosebud.
I like that.
I like that.
That's a good one.
That's a fun one.
Rosebud.
Yeah. I don't even know how she came up with that.
I like it.
It feels like she stuttered while saying my name.
Yeah.
And then just stuck with it. That's what I like about it.
That's very warm. Is your mom warm?
Yes.
Could you allude to the fear of being cold as a mother?
Yes. My mom is very warm.
But you have a fear of being cold.
Because I'm my father.
Oh, interesting.
I am 100% my dad.
Okay.
And my dad is cold. Oh. Now, it took me probably until I turned 30 to really enjoy that. Like to really like sit and watch my dad. I asked my dad what he wants to be called, like for my daughter.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you want her to call you? Like grandpa, whatever you want.
Yeah.
He goes, she can call me Mr. Baker. I was like, all right, Mr. Baker it is.
Baker.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes. He wants my daughter to call him Mr. Baker.
Absolutely not
and
Mr. Baker.
And then he was like, I was like, all right, fine. You know what? That's perfect. I was like, that is perfect because that is who you are. And also I had to call my grandfather Chief, which was his job title.
Because he was
chief of staff.
Chief of staff for the Reagan presidency.
Yes.
Yeah. So your grandfather was James Picker? Who was chief of staff for Ronald Reagan? You had to call him Chief?
They wanted us all to call him Chief.
No way.
I swear to God. That's
why. You didn't call him Grandpa, you called him Chief?
I called him Cheech.
Cheech?
Which was my attempt at Chief.
Oh, okay.
Because I was too little to understand or how to say.
I mean, this is madness.
I know.
No wonder you're a comedian. Of course you're a comedian. This is madness. None of this makes sense.
I know.
And sorry, I'm just sitting in that because I'm just like, that's sort of a marvel of a thing.
Right.
But you're saying you've come to appreciate him over the years, his coldness, as a thing that you enjoy.
Yes.
Why?
Because it's funny.
Oh, you just think it's funny?
Because it's really funny.
And you think the way that you're funny.
Yes.
Right.
And once I realized that, then I was like, oh, he's easy to like.
That's so funny.
Now that I understand.
He's easy to like.
Now that I understand we're the same.
He's somehow easy to like. That's your takeaway.
Yeah, it just happens that now I completely understand everything, everywhere he's coming from.
Let's unpack that.
Mm-hmm.
He's easy to like, but also challenging.
Also, he was challenging my whole life.
Yeah.
And now I had like a glimpse of it in my 20s.
Yeah.
When I had just quit drinking and my dad came to pick me up from the bus station and he had clearly been drinking.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had taken a bus in. I hadn't talked to him in like a year and a half. Because we had a couple of times during my life where I was like, I'm just not going to talk to him. We didn't talk for like a year, 2 years. And this was one of those times. This may have been the first time where I was like, I'm just not going to talk to my dad for a while. I go to visit him And I've been sober about 2 years. He comes, he's like clearly been drinking and he's driving. And I was like, Dad, this is the whole time I'm like, you shouldn't. I was furious. I was so mad. And he decides, let's pull over and let's get you some food while we're here. So I'm standing in the aisle of some Safeway or something. And I asked him if I could get agave. And he was like, what the fuck is agave? And I was like, it's just sugar. It's sugar or something. And he was like, he said something like agave or something. He like basically was like,
he made agave into a slur.
Yes, he made agave into a slur.
It's a feat of madness.
Right. And I was like, okay. I was like, you're like the worst dad. I think I said, you're the worst dad. And then he looks back at me and he was like, I'm your only dad. Ooh. And it was literally a moment where I saw the humor in it. Because I was like, you are.
Yeah.
You're the only one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get another one.
Yeah.
And I kind of was able to like laugh at myself and laugh at him.
Yeah.
And both of our just extreme misunderstanding of one another.
Yeah.
And that was like the first time I got a little glimpse of it. And ever since then, every time I have let my father down or my father has let me down, to me, it's like this massive like comedy of errors where it's just like, oh, God just mismatched like our expectations of each other.
Yeah.
And there's something to me that's so funny about two people that want something from one another that they're never going to get.
Yes.
And also their expectations being based in the fact that they are two different versions of the same character structure.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's very funny that we are just...
Yeah.
We're stuck together.
I have the same thing. Like the old man in the pool, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I talk about how my parents don't say I love you.
Yeah.
And then like my daughter forced me to call my parents and tell them I love them.
Yeah.
Because of the special coming out.
Yeah.
And I did. And then my mom said, I love you too. And then she said, Vinny, do you have anything to say? And he goes, it's a little syrupy. But then
it's amazing.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
But the only reason I bring it up is that Jen, my wife, was like, that's his way of saying I love you.
Yeah.
Making a joke about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, my expectations of my dad were, okay, so I watched your special with him. He was laughing the whole time. He's like repeating the things that you're saying. He's like, pizza and plaza. Like he's just dying. And then you get to the part where you talk about how your dad doesn't say I love you or your mom doesn't say I love you. And I look over and I swear to God, my dad was snoring. And
oh my God.
And I was like, of course. I was like, the whole time I'm watching and I'm going like, oh my God, there's going to be a moment where my dad finally gets to see like what this is really about. And I look over and he's fucking sleeping. And I'm like, well, of course he's sleeping.
Can't take it.
It's just the constant, you're always left hanging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's nothing funnier than a dynamic that never changes. It's like, that's every sitcom character.
Yeah. It's Julia Sweeney's special God Says Ha.
Yeah.
It's like everything is a joke through a certain lens.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can you remember a scene or like a moment in your life that changed your everything about your life? And at the time you didn't really know?
The only thing that I could think of is when my sister died. But I think I knew at that time. I'm trying to think of like...
Did it change just your entire perspective of life and existence?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think like when you experience a death, that it's a lot like experiencing the birth of a child.
Right.
So that would be the thing that, and I knew that it would, but I didn't know that it already had. You know what I mean? At the time.
You mean your sister dying?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I remember being like, oh my God, this is going to change everything. But it was like, I was scared that it was going to change everything. I didn't acknowledge that it already had changed everything.
Right.
So, yeah. Like it happens instantly.
Oh, interesting.
And I think in a way that does influence comedy for sure, because so much of comedy is like existential. At least for me, there's like an existential element to it. So
I don't know anyone for whom that's not true.
yeah.
And the only people I can think of are like not great.
Yeah, they're like birthday clowns. Yeah.
Did it make you more ambitious? Like, did it make you like seize the day? Kind of like, I need to do things now. I think need to live a fuller life.
No, but it made me want to turn off the lights for a while. You know, it was more of a long game. So if like it happened and I was like, I can't feel any of this for a long time. And then once that kind of ran out, once like the alcohol and shit stopped working, then all of a sudden the lights were on. And I was like, oh, now I have all of this energy, this like addict manic energy, and I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so all of it started to kind of percolate in a creative way.
Do you have any new jokes, half premises, half things that you're working on? I have a couple things that I've jotted down that I was doing this weekend.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. This is a 100% half-baked idea, but I've been going into a lot of stuff on stage. I've been free associating on things I didn't understand growing up.
Yeah.
And thinking that my parents understood these things. And then now I'm a 45-year-old dad and I'm like, oh, I have no idea what these things are. And so I have to teach my daughter and I'm like, I don't know. But anyway, I've been just trying to like riff on this idea of the amount of things that I didn't understand. And like, I still don't, like Oona hurt her foot and we took her for an xray and she says, Dad, what's an xray? And I was like, well, I'm like, I know what the outcome is. Right. Like, I know that at the end,
you get a picture of your bones.
But I don't really know what happens in between. I know that everyone in the room wears a lead suit except you.
And also, you are the only one left in the room. They put you in a lead suit and then they run out of the room.
Oh, I know.
So that's the part that's scariest.
Right. And at some point, what I realized is at some point I did understand roughly what an x-ray was. I've probably read about it maybe 20 years ago. And what I found about knowledge is that with age, it does not ripen. You don't go from like half understanding things to being like, I'll tell you a few things about radiology.
Yeah. You get wiser, but you do get dumber.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Wiser. Let me write that down.
Yeah.
Wiser, but dumber.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. It's like,
or wiser, but not smarter.
Yeah.
Is kind of the way to.
Wiser, but less smart.
Yeah.
I think dumb is a curse word at my daughter's school, but I swear to God, you can't say stupid, you can't say dumb. It's like,
I think
she has a whole list of words she can't say, and then when my wife and I say the words, she gets angry at us. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
If Minnow brings home a list 5 years from now from school, I feel like my inclination will be to shred it in front of her.
Oh my God. First of all, you should be roasted for calling your child Minnow.
I know.
Weeks.
I know.
For weeks in a row.
I know. But it's a family name. Everybody's like, why did you call her Minnow? I'm like, it's a family name. It's my aunt's name. So I'm like, every time I'm like, it's not after the fish. It's after my aunt.
You saying it's not after the fish is a cry for help.
Well, it's too late, Mike. It's too late. That's her name. Her middle name's Baker. So we can't switch to that. We can't just call her Baker.
So do you think she's going to start being mocked by other children at age 2 or 3?
I feel like here's the thing. I went around the room at SNL, and I was like, who? I was like, if I name my kid Minnow,
Oh my God, Jesus Christ.
I was like, tell me what you would come up with. Like,
Yes.
give me some nicknames that you would come up with. And they were like, I don't know, like fish sticks. And I was like, that's not that bad.
Not that bad.
I was like, nobody could, it's a room full of writers. And I was like, give me your best. Like, I need you guys to make fun of the name. And nobody gave me anything.
Right.
So I was like,
Not that bad.
it's not that bad.
Right. I get that.
I don't know. But also I was like, I don't really care if she does get bullied. I'm like, it's fine. Somebody called me Elmer Fudd.
Right. A joke that I'm working on stage right now is a friend of mine's son is named Arrow, and they were at a coffee shop one day. He goes, Arrow, if I don't get my coffee soon, I will die, literally. And I wanted to say to this guy, like, look, if you want to teach your son the meaning of the word literally, that's not the best way to do it. Because if he thinks that that's what literally means, he might think he is an arrow. And, if he is an arrow and you hug him, he might die literally.
Literally.
Yeah. Which is a fun one.
That's great.
What's insane is, and I want to go into a full riff on this in my act, but I don't know how relatable it is. It's probably true in like Seattle, San Francisco, Brooklyn, etc. But it's like, that's not the only arrow I know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know like 3 arrows.
Yeah.
And I know like 3 bows.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's a lot of weird names.
There's a bow and arrow joke there, but I don't know what it is.
And they actually don't know each other.
Yeah, they could. We could have a bow and arrow party. I don't know.
If I feel like if you're going to name your kid Bo or Arrow, they should only get to hang out with each other.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything?
Okay. This is half an idea. It's not really.
Sure.
But I want to talk about how I feel bad telling jokes now.
Oh, yeah.
That never happened
relate to
before.
this. Yeah.
Like, I read an article about a guy who got a pig heart transplant and he died, obviously. So I was going to write a joke about that, but then I was like, what if my daughter needs a pig heart? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, everything now is like, I just feel like a simp.
Yes.
Like, I'm like, there's something about, and I don't know if this is funny. I don't know if this is, if it just ends up being like navel gazy and fucking nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
But how I like left behind like the coolest life to become like a simp for a baby that doesn't know she has hands.
That's really funny. Yeah, no, it's weird. Like there is this kind of double life situation with being a comedian.
Yeah.
Which is you want to tell jokes that are pushing the envelope and like are crossing the line or close to the line.
Yeah.
But then like you have to be at a certain point, if you choose to be a grown up and a parent, you're just like, okay, so I'm not going to say any of that stuff here.
Right.
With the parents.
Yeah.
But then I'm going to say it to a basement full of strangers.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go back and I'm not going to tell them that I said that.
Yes.
And then I'm going to go tell what happened to the basement full of strangers.
Yeah.
And it's so weird.
Right.
I think that's the life of a comedian. It's like you can't actually say the things. And then
it's like you don't tell them that you said that you're saying these things, but then they watch it.
No,
like,
I know.
You know what I mean? Then
literally, I have a joke recently on stage where I say like, these other dads are losers.
Yeah.
And I go, they're not like me. You know, and of course the audience knows that they are like me.
Right.
But and then I go, and don't tell them I told you. And of course the joke is like, eventually they're just gonna see
they're gonna know.
And
that is so funny.
I know. It's like, I don't know.
Can I just say what you're really good at is like you're making a map of things in your head that are all connected and you're always seeing the connections between them.
Oh.
And I'm always like, God, that's so, I don't even think that's something that you can just like learn. I think that's something that your brain does.
But I think yours does too. I think everyone who's a comic is kind of doing that, I think in a certain sense.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm a lunatic. Like, oh, look around me. It's like all these
Yeah.
cars. Like, I always think in relation to like everything being causal. So like I'll do, like Gary was opening for me in DC last weekend and he was like, how come you took out such and such a joke? And I was like, because I couldn't pair it with other jokes.
Right.
You ever have that?
Yes.
I'm like, because it's a one-off.
Because it just exists on its own.
Yeah.
And until I have something to really segue into it, there's no reason for it to be there.
Yeah.
Because it...
That joke was, by the way, and I think it's a funny joke. It's like Oona and I were watching tennis and like it was from a few years ago. It was like a documentary about tennis. And she goes, I hope Serena wins this match because she's black. And I thought, I'm glad this didn't go the other way.
Right.
I appreciate what's in your heart.
Right.
But maybe we'll keep that in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I took it out because I just didn't have anything that's similar.
Yeah.
But it's a funny thing to occur, but it's a
Right.
little bit in the category of kids say the darndest things.
Right.
Where it's like, unless you have a really good kids say the darndest things,
There's really
why don't
no...
you keep that kid say the darndest things to yourself?
Yeah. 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 I feel like that's tricky. There's so much of that I'm running into right now where I'm just like, and she doesn't even talk, but I'm just like talking about like how she barfed down my tits and shit in my hand at the same time.
Done. Who needs a punchline?
But I was saying it's like a full body like screenshot. Like
Wait, it's what?
Like a full body screenshot where you press both the buttons at the same time. You know what I mean?
Have you done that on stage?
I did
That's
it.
so funny.
I did it on Sherry Shepherd like a week ago, and it worked. But I was like, that was the first time I'd said it.
That's great.
So I was like, okay, that's like fun.
Can you unpack full body screenshot as an idea?
Yeah, but I feel like it falls apart when I try to unpack it.
Oh, really?
Because if it's like you press two buttons. It's like the power buttons.
Oh, yes.
And it powers it off, or it takes a screenshot. I don't know. Like, when you get a cheat code on like a video game.
Yeah.
and you're like, A-B, right. Left, right. Barf down tits, shit in hand. Like,
that's good.
that could work. Yeah.
That's really good.
And then you get another life at the end.
You could do just that part as a bit and literally free associate
Right.
on stage about like how she feels in that moment and how you feel at that moment.
Yes.
I think people would lose their mind laughing.
Yeah.
Because it's so relatable. Because even if you didn't have a kid, like the relatability of like everything always happens at the same time.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. That's something.
Yeah.
That's so unfair.
It's so unfair.
There's definitely, yes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, when you're going through a breakup and your best friend's getting married, it's like, it's not fair that that's happening at the same time.
Right. Or it's like, it's almost like if it were raining and then it were snowing and then someone threw up on your tits.
I love that. I always love the comparison that's going a different direction and then uses what actually happened as the punch. I love those jokes.
The last thing is working out for cause, which is what's an organization that you like to donate to that I will donate to, and then we'll link to them in the show notes.
I always go for ASPCA.
Oh, great.
I always love the ASPCA.
Great. So we will donate to the ASPCA. We'll link to them in the show notes. Rosie, this is so fun. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
it all.
Thank you.
And just keep in mind, it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Because I know very well. I know the answers to, I know where it's all going to go.
You could be lying to my face right now and I would hold on to it like it was the most important thing to remember, because I truly, it's just hearing that from another comic who's a parent is like, that's everything.